Welcome into Down the Line with Charlie and Bo. I'm Sam Wilson, and today we are at the Ashburn-Calais Golf Tournament, which was actually started by Richie Ashburn's son. We'll get a chance to talk to him later. And then after that, Charlie and Bo will be joined by two former Philly GMs that you just might remember. Stay tuned to find out. Down the Line is brought to you in part by the Valley Forge Tourism and Convention Board. Visit Montgomery County's main streets. Find out more at makeitmainstreet.com.
They're not just familiar faces. They're your friends and neighbors. It's their small businesses, a beating heart that makes a neighborhood a home, where personality is served on a plate and imagination paints a brighter world. A place where fresh is always in stock with a personal touch passed down through generations. Support small and make a big difference. Make it local. Make it Main Street. Make it Montco.
Welcome back to Down the Line with Charlie and Bo. Right now I am with Richard Ashburn, one of the founding members of the Richie Ashburn and Harry Calais Foundation. Rich, you're one of the founding members, so can you give us kind of a rundown why you guys started it, when you started it, what the foundation does?
We started it the year after my dad passed away in '97. We were doing camps under the Richie Ashburn camps, but they were pay camps. When he passed away, Rick and I decided we got to do this for the kids for free. We went to Fairmount Park in Philadelphia, this would be '98, and we just tried to find kids in the park that we could teach baseball to. The ones we did find, we asked them to go back into their neighborhood and come back with more kids, and we'd feed them some McDonald's or something and well, 12 kids came out. We had a camp. A PAL police officer came by and kind of was looking at, what these two guys were doing with kids in the park.
Yeah,
and
probably not the smartest thing, safest thing, so kids.
Yeah, there's a different time, almost 25 years ago. But he saw what we were doing and he said, I'll have 60 kids here for you tomorrow. And the next day we showed up and he brought a bus filled with 60 kids. That's kind of how we started. And we really wanted, to do these free camps for kids, and through PAL, through the Phillies, through many of the businesses in Philadelphia, we just kept growing. And at this point now, there's a waiting list to get our camps into their area. So that's how we started.
You said that you have waiting lists to get you in their area. What areas are you currently in?
Mostly inner city Philadelphia. We do go outside the city in Pennsylvania, a couple places. We finish our camps in Ocean City, New Jersey every year. And we always use high school kids. When we go down there, we use the high school kids from their school. We also have some that come down from Penn Charter and other schools that we recruit up here.
What are some of the things you guys teach at the camps? Just like the basics, or is it different at each level?
We do everything: fielding, hitting, throwing, running, and in all phases and all ages. We have really ages 5 to 13. I'd say 7 to 12 is our norm, but we've had young kids come in and some older kids come in that still want basics taught to them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We're at the Ashburn and Calais Golf Tournament today. One of your events to get sponsorships and all that. What are some of the other events held throughout the year for that? Well,
we do one fundraiser every 2 years, and it used to be dinners. We just would do a dinner every 2 years, and we've been doing it that way for a while, and it's very successful. You kind of do them every year and they get old, but you do them every 2 years, and we can set them up correctly. We get the right amount of people in, and it's just we found out it to be a nice way to do it.
You mentioned Dad and Harry, so can you give us some of the stories about them and what made this so special to them?
Well, the way they started, Harry came in and took over a very popular announcer's job, and he was a little nervous about that. But my father already being there, he kind of took Harry under his wing, even though Harry was play-by-play and Dad was a color. He made sure Harry he knew right away Harry was a good guy and obviously a wonderful announcer.
How old were you when when your dad was there? Were you like a young kid at that point? Were you older? Did you get the experience of?
I was 11 years old, I think, when Harry came to Philadelphia, and I grew up with Bisom, Bill Campbell, and my dad as broadcasters. So, all of a sudden, like Bisom was not there anymore, and Bill Campbell was not there anymore. So, for me, he was like an uncle. I used to do stats in the game for my dad and Harry. There was only a ticker tape machine, and that was the only, I could give them scores they could announce, or if somebody hit a home run in San Francisco or something. But Harry would always make sure he'd mention my name at the end of the game and give me a plug. I always thought, what a great guy he was. He didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
So, but he really was a family member. Dad and him were such great friends, closer than brothers. I mean, I sat behind them for years. I've always said I want to write a book called Between Innings, because I was there between innings with Dad and Harry, and a lot of crazy, fun things happened. So someday I might do that. But just having Harry there and Dad, they were inseparable in every way. The only way they were going to not be together was through death.
That's awesome. Now, if you had to choose one, what would you say your favorite story was with your dad and Harry?
My favorite story, it's a very personal one too, but my wife and I were with Harry and his wife at the dog track during spring training. And I'd never been there, and I'd never bet on dogs, didn't know how it worked. And so I think I took $100 with me to bet. Harry knew what he was doing. So while we're there, there was 13 races. The first 12 races, I lost, $10 or whatever each race. And I told Harry, I said, I've got very little money left, and I'm going to bet on this long shot dog. And he said, you might as well throw that money in the bay, because that dog isn't going to win. Well, the dog won by like 16 lengths, and I won about $700 and some odd dollars, and I was very happy. Harry was happy for me. It was just a fun evening. We get back to my dad's house in Largo, and my brother and my father are sitting there, both of them crying. And my sister Jan had been killed that night in a car accident. So my favorite story is also a very tough story, but Harry was there for us, helped us. My dad and I flew up the next day to Lankenau Hospital to identify Jan, because we didn't want my mom or my sisters doing it, that she had died at 11:18, and I didn't even think anything of that. But about 6 months later, I'm cleaning out my wallet, and there's the winning ticket for the dog race. That dog won at 11:18. So the hair went up on my arms. I called Harry right away, and I told Harry what happened, and he said, I knew it. He goes, your sister helped that dog win that race. That dog had no chance. So I always got a kick out of that, because he was there for us, and for my dad. He was always there for my dad, for family first. But that story was always a favorite of mine, because it kind of resolved that my sister Jan was okay. Like, she actually was part of what that dog did that night, and for Harry to respond the way he did. So there's many other stories I could tell you, and hopefully that'll be another time. But that was one that's always been special for me.
So you'll have to come back on the show when you write that book.
I will.
For now, thank you so much for telling everybody, and thank you so much for everything you do for the community. We'll be right back with Down the Line.
Hey everybody, we're back with the Charlie and Bo show, and Chuck, we got two guys here, in my opinion, have not got the accolades they should have gotten. And if you watch our ball club the last 5 or 6 years, I think people are going to appreciate what Ed Wade did and what Ruben Amaro Jr. did during the time that I managed and when you managed. And I'm just going to read off a list of Eddie's accomplishments. when he was the GM here. He had Pat Burrow, Madsen, Myers, Cole Hamels, Kyle Kendrick, J.A. Happ, Chase Utley. He made the free agency for Jim Thome, made the trade for Bobby Abreu. And now I go to the other side. When you were the champions, Ruben Amaro was in charge of getting Oswald here, Halladay here, Cliff Lee here, Hunter Pence here. And in my opinion, people overlook all the stuff that they did here. And I just want to congratulate both of them, because me being a longtime Philly, you being involved with the Phillies, they have made this organization very proud. And I know you have a few things to say about both of these guys.
Yeah, when I first met Ed, of course, it was after that he had made the deal for, the Phillies had made a deal for Thome. And the first time I talked to him, and I'm sure that Ruben had something to do with telling Ed who I was or whatever and things like that. And I respect him in the fact that I get along with him good. He's a very direct person to you, but at the same time, when we talk, he's always prepared, and also he would always, if we had kind of a discussion about something and we weren't on and we weren't on the same page, Ed would always tell me, he said, just think about this and things like that. And really, it was very easy work for him, but at the same time, he'll also let you know exactly how he felt about everything and how he wanted things run. I think Ed definitely was a guy that got overlooked in the game as far as things he accomplished and things he set up. I think our team was set up good, like when Ed got let go, and I was very upset, and I was and I was kind of hurt because Ed was the one that gave me my job, and actually that was the first interview I ever had in baseball. And when he's sitting here today, he definitely played a huge part in our success. And so was Ruben, and so was Pat Gillick and those guys.
And I want to ask you, both of you guys, who was your mentor, so to speak? I mean, this just didn't happen. You've been always a great baseball man, Ruben, obviously, through his dad and everything, but who had the most impact on you climbing up the ladder?
Before I get to that, I've got to thank both you guys for what you just said. I tell people all the time, I think I told Patty before we started doing the show here, you're the smartest baseball guy I've ever been around.
I appreciate it.
I don't think you ever missed anything on the field as a player, watching you play. I know as a manager you didn't, your intensity level, and I know just with you, and I wish I was up in the box for 3 hours a night listening to you and Charlie talk about the good and what we have today.
I don't think you want to be up there right now.
And the other side of it is Charlie, the year prior to hiring you as manager, I had a chance to see what you're all about, your relationship with Thome, but how you immediately connected with all the other players. And at that point in time, when we were making a change, I thought you were the right guy for the job. And again, candidly, I don't think it was completely appreciated by everybody when
Right.
Charlie first came on board. But the reality is there was a parade down Broad Street and a lot of good years. And I think a lot of that came with the stage that you set as a manager and how you were able to follow through on that and the pieces that we were able to put in along the way, whether it was myself or Pat Gillick or Ruben at the end there. So again, I appreciate it. Getting back to your question, I had a ton of them, ton of mentors. I started the day after my 21st birthday. Larry Shank was the PR director, the PR intern. When I was assistant GM, Pope was sort of on the sidelines, and when I had a chance to become general manager, I immediately wanted to re-engage with Paul, just to have him around, because there might have been generational differences in not only our ages, but in the game itself. But the reality was that if you're willing to sit and be quiet and listen to what Pope had to say, there were always nuggets in there that fit that time frame. Dallas, obviously, as a senior advisor. Tal Smith in Houston. I mean, Tal hired me 3 times. So I had a chance to work with Tal to get a foundation to get back onto the baseball side. And then Tal was instrumental in me becoming general manager in Houston and was supportive when we were trying to get to the finish line with the veteran club and we were trying to tear it down when the sale was coming. So I've been fortunate, and I think a key for any young executive or somebody in that position is to be willing to be a good listener, and then you've got to make a decision at the end, but you try to maybe not build a consensus, but make sure you've got everybody's thought process before you make that final decision. And Ruben and I, Ruben literally grew up a Philly, And I had a chance the day after my 21st birthday to become a Philly, and I'm forever grateful for the opportunities that I got along the way.
Well, that's some great advice. Rube, I know that your dad had a big influence on you, but you had to come in and follow a Hall of Fame guy in Pat Gillick. Give me the story on that, how that happened.
Yeah, and that was a very interesting time. I mean, I have to say a couple of things about the opportunity that Ed gave me literally off the field. I was a player at the time. I came in and talked to him in spring training of 1998. It was my last year playing, and he actually sort of offered me the job of being his assistant. And I was like really taken aback. For him to take the chance, for a guy who was really still in a uniform, for him to think about me in that capacity was an honor and a shock in a lot of ways. But then after talking to him during the course of the year, I couldn't look the gift horse in the mouth. I mean, it was impossible for me to not say yes. So for me to get that opportunity, I have to thank Ed. There's so many different mentors that I had. Ed being my very first one as far as working in the front office. As far as baseball is concerned, my dad, Dallas Green, even guys like Jim Fregosi, who I played for with the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, I learned a lot from all of those people. My very first assignment that I gave myself was to scout when I was an assistant GM for Ed in spring training, was to scout some of the teams in spring training. And I went with Paul Owens at the behest of Ed, I think. And I went with Paul Owens and just sat with him and watched games and learned how to scout baseball. I've been watching baseball from the vantage point of being on the bench a lot, but I'd never done that from the scouting seat. And to have that knowledge and to have that opportunity to be able to work with those people, I was very, very fortunate to have done that. And then I ended up working for Pat Gillick. Right. I mean, I got an opportunity to get another perspective of how to do things and how other people did things. And obviously a brilliant executive as well, Hall of Famer. But it was a very strange situation when I was then hired after winning a World Series. Typically you get hired to be a GM when the team's not doing well, right. When it's doing poorly. And he kind of handed off the reins to me, and David Montgomery had the faith in me to be able to take over in a situation where there's only one place to go. Yep. I mean, you can't, it's very, very difficult to go, get higher than being a World Series champion. But I relished the opportunity. I loved it. And was lucky, very, very lucky to have these people, you guys, as part of the learning process of what it is to be a baseball executive.
Well, I tell you what now, as funny as baseball is, Eddie fired me and Ruben fired Charlie. And we're all buddies. See how that turns out over time? And there's no animosity. Was I upset when I got fired? I'm not going to lie to anybody. Yeah, I was upset. But I also understand the game, the nature of the game. And I'll be honest with you, every time that Ed and I had a conversation, he would talk to me every day, everything good, everything good. And not one time did we ever, Ed, you're wrong, or Bo, you're wrong. We got it settled, whether it was behind closed doors. And it was a great experience for me, believe me. And to take that team from losing 100 games to take it where it was, I was very satisfied, but Ed had a lot to do with that. And Charlie, you won the World Series, and you were out the door. So maybe you could explain that.
I think like when I was instrumental in the trade for Ruben in Cleveland. And when I had him over there, I remember one time we used to go do some extra work of a morning. I remind him sometime, I think he forgot about that really, but anyway, like we was having.
He had other priorities, Charlie.
We're going to keep that right now because we got to take a break. But when we come back, we're going to ask these two gentlemen right here what they think the state of the game is right now as we speak. We'll be back right after this.
They're not just familiar faces, they're your friends and neighbors. It's their small businesses, a beating heart that makes a neighborhood a home, where personality is served on a plate and imagination paints a brighter world. A place where fresh is always in stock with a personal touch passed down through generations. Support small and make a big difference. Make it local. Make it Main Street. Make it Montco.
All right, we are back with two guys that I think had a lot to do with the success of the Philadelphia Phillies, Ed Wade and Ruben Amaro Jr. And before we went away on that break, Charlie was telling the story about Ruben Amaro, so I want you to finish that story, Chuck.
Yeah, you know, we'd go to the cage a lot of mornings and stuff like that, and was in Oakland one day, and I was working with him. I'd worked with him about an hour or maybe even longer, and he was a switch hitter. Of course, we had to do both sides, and he was kind of cursing. He was unhappy with his hitting, and when we got down toward the end, I told him, I said, you might be the most high-maintenance 25th player I ever seen.
Same way. Yeah. We all have second thoughts, Charlie.
But anyway, you know, like Ruben got some actually, and I remind him sometime of the work he put in, because he got to play in Toronto and he got to play in Boston in these series, and he actually helped us. I would say, like Walter Austin used to say, if a guy sits on the bench and he helps you win 3 or 4 games, if he contributes, he did his job. Well, I know Ruben, he helped us win at least 5 or more games just by his defense and his offensive production.
Can I tell a quick story about Ruben?
Sure.
I'm the assistant GM. Lee Thomas is the GM. We had an outfielder go down in the like Thursday morning or whatever. We find out he's going on the DL. I forget who it was. Ruben had called Lee looking for a job. We were up in Syracuse looking for a job. Lee said, I don't have anything. Then we get the call that this other outfielder's going on the DL. So Lee calls him back and he says, Ruben, I got a job for you. And Ruben goes, okay, Lee, I'm still in Syracuse. I can be there in 3 hours. And Lee goes, no, I can be in Scranton in an hour and a half. Lee goes, no, this is a job in Philadelphia in the big leagues. And Ruben goes, oh, okay, I can be there. He said, I'll have my agent call you. To which Lee said, if you have to have your agent call me, don't come. He said, I'll be there in 3 hours.
These were picking our Rube. I got a real good one for him. So we're in San Diego, and John Vukovic, who was my best buddy in baseball, him and I were coaching, and Ruben's dad was there. And Ruben had a couple bad games where he bad base running and didn't swing the bat well. And Ruben Sr. came up and he called me and Vuki and he says, hey, I'm going to tell you guys right now, you can slap him anytime you want. It makes him a better player.
I remember that. I remember there was a powwow underneath that underneath the stands at Jack Murphy, and they hammered me for 20 minutes, and then they sent me down.
So I'm going to ask both you guys. I'm going to ask Ed first because he's been away from it a little bit longer than you, Rube. What's your thought process on the analytics, and how important would they come into play if you were general manager right now, Ed?
I think analytics are important, but they can't override all the other aspects of scouting, player development, all those different things come into play. And I've actually been asked that question a lot recently, and I actually have an example. In 2001, there was a college player, had a bad junior year, had a big hole inside, and was a below-average defensive first baseman. So the analytics guys, if they had gotten that information, this guy probably would not have been drafted. We had an area scout, Jerry Lafferty, who kept coming back to Mike Arbuckle saying, don't give up on this guy, don't give up on this guy. Other clubs are walking away, but don't give up on him. So we took this guy in the 5th round. The guy's name is Ryan Howard. Ryan Howard may not get drafted if you were just basing it on analytics, but as Dallas used to talk about head and heart, Jerry Lafferty not only measured Ryan's head and heart, but used his own head and heart to convince Mike Arbuckle not to walk past a guy that ended up being a Rookie of the Year, an MVP, and a key component in that World Series club that showed up in 08. So, yeah, the analytics have a place in the game. I understand that. I started as a PR guy. I was the statistician, all that kind of stuff. But you can't walk past the human element, and unfortunately, we see the game more and more going in that direction with scouts being let go and the predominance of data versus what you see. And I think it shows up with the product on the field, unfortunately.
Rube?
Yeah, I probably would echo exactly what Ed says. I do think that there's a lot of information, having been on the coaching side, where you can utilize a lot of information to gain an advantage in some way, shape, or form. But I totally agree with Ed in that, and this is a game of human beings. This is not a game of widgets. These are people who are living, breathing people who have great athletic talent. The athletic ability in today's game is extraordinary. When I got a chance to scout in 2019, just watching the speed, the ability to swing the bats, obviously the spin rates and the velocities are off the charts. But I think that there's a place for people to learn how to play the game of baseball, to win baseball games, and I don't see that happening consistently enough. And as Ed said, I don't think we have the right product out there right now, because it's unfortunate, because these athletes are so good.
Well, I'm just glad that these two guys got to share some information with everybody right here. We could do another whole show with them, the knowledge that they have and the opportunities that they gave Charlie and myself. But until then, again, thanks Ed, thanks Ruben, and Chuck, you and I are going on down the road. We're going to have some more shows, and we'll see you guys next week's edition.
That's it for this week's show. You never know where we're just going to end up next. For Charlie and Bo, I'm Sam Wilson, and we'll catch you down the line. Down the Line is brought to you in part by the Valley Forge Tourism and Convention Board. Visit Montgomery County's main streets. Find out more at makeitmainstreet.com.